Russia will struggle to replace the increasing numbers of troops lost to death and injury on the front line if the West continues to back Ukraine, a U.S. think tank said. The Business Insider reported this. It is noted that the Russian military in November suffered record casualties, with around 1,500 troops killed or injured daily, as it pushed back the Ukrainian military in East Ukraine and Kursk Oblast, according to UK military intelligence. The figures from the UK's Ministry of Defence said that Russia suffered 45,690 casualties in November, the fourth consecutive month in which its casualties have increased. The Institute for the Study of War said that the staggeringly high cost of deaths and injuries isn't sustainable. Russia's constrained labor pool is likely unable to sustain this increased casualty rate in the medium term, and continued Western military support for Ukraine remains vital to Ukraine's ability to inflict losses at this rate, said the analysts in their daily update on the progress of the war. Petro Chernik, a Ukrainian military observer, told Army-Inform that Russia has boosted its recruitment rates to around 42,000 a month. However, it will need to increase that to 50,000 a month if it is to continue its advances in Donetsk, sustaining its current casualty rates. At the same time, Russia is suffering an acute domestic workforce shortage. Reuters reported in November that increasing numbers of workers are being pulled into Russia's growing defense sector, meaning that swaths of the economy are struggling to find staff. High inflation and sanctions are compounding Russia's economic woes. The Kremlin is offsetting its high losses in Ukraine by offering recruits relatively lucrative contracts and boosting ranks with prisoners and foreign fighters. But Russia can't both replace its troops lost in Ukraine and solve its workforce crisis, said the ISW. Russians can either serve in uniform in Ukraine or work in Russia's domestic economy, but they cannot do both simultaneously, its analysts said. Weapons from Western allies have been vital in enabling Ukraine to inflict massive casualty rates on Russia, even as severe manpower shortages of its own mean that it's struggling to hold off intensifying Russian attacks. Russia has also been sending troops into head-on, high-casualty attacks, known as human wave or meat grinder attacks, which have contributed to a high casualty count. Iran said Friday it conducted a successful space launch, the latest for its program the West alleges improves Tehran's ballistic missile program. Iran conducted the launch using its Simorgh program, a satellite-carrying rocket with a series of failed launches, at Iran's Imam Khomeini spaceport in rural Semnan province. That's the site of Iran's civilian space program. The Simorgh carried what Iran described as an orbital propulsion system, as well as two research systems to a 400-kilometer orbit above the Earth. A system that could change the orbit of a spacecraft would allow Iran to geosynchronize the orbits of its satellites. Tehran has long sought that ability. Iran also put the payload of the Simorgh at 300 kilograms, heavier than its previous successful launches. There was no immediate independent confirmation the launch was successful. The U.S. military did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The announcement comes as heightened tensions grip the wider Middle East over Israel's continued war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip and as an uneasy ceasefire holds in Lebanon. The United States has previously said Iran's satellite launches defy a UN Security Council resolution and called on Tehran to undertake no activity involving ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear weapons. UN sanctions related to Iran's ballistic missile program expired in October 2023.
سنگین‌ترین محموله تاریخ فضایی صنعت فضایی ایران شامل بلوک انتقال مداری سامان و ماهواره فخر یک ارتش جمهوری اسلامی ایران در 8مین پرتاب پرتابگر ماهواره بر سیمرغ به فضا پرتاب می‌شود.
انتقال مداری سامان یک به همراه ماهواره مخابراتی فخر یک ارتش جمهوری اسلامی ایران و یک محموله جانبی دیگر به وسیله ماهواره بر سیمرغ از پایگاه امام خمینی پرتاب و با موفقیت در مدار بیضوی با ارتفاع اوج 410 کیلومتر.
The Kremlin's Z propagandists are unhappy with the protracted war against Ukraine. Against the backdrop of news about the supply of long-range missiles to Ukraine, they are calling on Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to wind down the so-called SVO. The corresponding topic was raised on the air of the propaganda radio station Komsomolskaya Pravda. Z-War correspondent Kirill Fedorov took part in the broadcast and was very alarmed by the news about possible deliveries of American JASSM air missiles to Kyiv. The propagandist was so scared that he began to make claims against the Kremlin for its inability to resolve problems peacefully. Now they have found out that they can strike inside Russia. Discussions are underway, which means it will 100% end with a positive result about the transfer of JASSM missiles for the same F-16s. JASSM is not Storm Shadow. Its range is about 1,000 kilometers, and this can already cover St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region in principle, quite easily. It is 100% impossible to shoot down. Wherever they want to strike, they will strike. A difficult situation. And everything is going further in a direction where probably it was not necessary to go. It seems that our ancestors were smarter. Although the Cuban Missile Crisis also went in the wrong direction, but somehow they managed to agree there. Something is going in the wrong direction. Fedorov said. In response, host Ivan Panikin complained that SVO has been going on for too long. He called on Russians to prepare for the worst and not to place their hopes on the new US President Donald Trump. Oreshnik didn't impress them that much. It's better to prepare for the worst. We always say before some grand deliveries that it won't change anything on the battlefield. We have this habit. Then, when we already observe the development of the situation, we often have slightly different impressions of everything that's happening. I'll quote Roman Alekine, a local Kursk volunteer. It's shaking so much that glasses are falling off the shelves, although it's falling 10 to 20 kilometers from where he lives. Can you imagine the power of the Western aid that Ukraine is receiving? These are serious missiles, and I personally am very worried about the same Kursk, Bryansk, and Belgorod. The propagandist said,